So you may have noticed that videos recently started getting uploaded in 1080p 60 frames per second instead of their previous setup, which was 720p 60 frames per second. And you may be wondering why the change suddenly happened after so long of the change not happening and whatnot. So I started uploading my videos in 720p 30 when I started doing the channel originally. And I, of course, wanted to increase video quality, but it's not always easy to do because rendering times are a thing and whatnot. So I eventually went from 30 to 60 frames per second, which was surprisingly easy because despite the, logically you would think that it's double the data, right? Double the frames. But I think the way that frames blend and stuff like that leads to it being a surprisingly minor change in overall rendering time. But then you get into the difficult thing, which is 1080p. The resolution difference between 720p and 1080p is huge. Because you're what, quadrupling the size of the frame, essentially, the number of actual pixels and whatnot. And so I found that whenever I would try to render in 1080p, my videos would still be rendering when I woke up in the morning, and they'd still be rendering when it's time for me to work, and they'd still be rendering, to the point where, if I recorded enough stuff and needed to render it, the time would loop onto itself over the 24-hour span and whatnot. So, I got into a trap where, there's literally not enough time in the day, and I need my computer in order to record videos, and I can't record videos if I'm rendering, and if rendering takes all of time forever, then you can't deal with that. One solution I had, potentially, for that was the idea of, a render farm, a secondary computer. This is actually what Andrew does on his channel. Andrew, in his little recording office, he has his main computer that he uses for all computerly activities all the time, and also for recording and whatnot, and gaming and everything. And then he has a second computer behind him on a separate desk, and that's actually where all of his renders happen. And so he edits and renders on that computer, and so he can just leave it idling, and so it's often sitting there in the corner and rendering while we're over there recording various games and whatnot. That's a reasonable solution, but you need to both have money and space, because you need to have a secondary computer, which I kind of have. I have a partially dismantled second computer, because it's my old computer. It's just sort of sitting in the corner, piled, not set up at all, just sort of as more debris and luggage in my confined living space. But on top of having that computer, you need to have, living space for that kind of thing. Andrew has a house, which is a decent advantage to have in this situation. I have a 10 by 10 room that I rent. I do not have room for, a second desk and computer and setup like that. And I don't even want to think about the heat output, because I also sleep in the same room, and it would basically be torture to have two computers running all the time in a room that I'm in, not even to think about questions of whether or not I'm even allowed to have that many computers running before I start getting into trouble about power consumption or something like that, and whatnot. So it has not been a great solution. Thankfully, the problem just kind of solved itself. So I've been using a program called Sony Vegas 13.0, and I originally used Sony Vegas 6.0 or something. I don't know. I've used their platform for a while now. It went over to being now this apparently called Magix Vegas, which I don't know if that's a company renaming or a company change, or Sony sold it off or what. I haven't paid very close attention, but I noticed that in Magix Vegas 15, they added a very important feature, which is NVIDIA GPU acceleration. So now, instead of just being an entirely CPU-based process, your GPU can now take part in the rendering process and speed it up significantly. So now, I upgraded to Magix Vegas 15, and now I can render my 1080p videos faster than I used to render my 720p videos without any changes to my actual computer, because it's purely what the software will use as resource and stuff like that, and that has been fantastic. So that's why videos are suddenly in 1080p, because I have a NVIDIA 1070 GeForce whatever graphics card. So, in short, I wasn't really able to incorporate solutions for the resolution problem, and I was about to say in short, but actually I want to get into another thing, which is like, the reason why I didn't just do like fewer videos with higher rendering. First of all, the number of videos I make is part of like why I'm able to make a living doing this in the first place at the moment, but also like the number of people who ask for higher resolution, like being like, when's 1080 gonna happen, dude, and stuff like that. That's like one comment per month. But people being like, more videos faster, and stuff like that is like every single day. So there's a clear gap in demand between those two ideas. And so I put priority on maintaining the current video output within reason over increasing the video resolution over time. Part of it's probably due to the fact that like half of you are watching this on like phones and stuff like that, where the difference is like negligible to unnoticeable, and also a lot of people just don't notice resolution as much as they think they do. Like, Video Game Donkey revealed the fact that he renders his videos in 1080p, but he records them in like 480p or lower because he doesn't understand how to record PC games. And you can tell that if you look at his like Overwatch videos, you can look like, oh wow, look at the text and like how low resolution these videos are, but they're rendered in 1080p, which is fake. It's fake 1080, but YouTube tells you it's 1080, even though it's recorded in 480, and people like don't notice because that's how that kind of stuff goes. But I did want to get to 1080 sooner or later, but it just wasn't where the demand was. I had a sliding scale to deal with, and the one side of the scale had way more demand than the other side of the scale, so I stuck with the video quantity over video resolution. And then this software update removed that sliding scale entirely, and now everything's fine, basically. Hooray! But, yeah, in short, basically, I was able to afford a graphics card upgrade because of Patreon support, and I was able to afford a software update because of Patreon support, and that's more or less why this is going on. So you can thank my Patreon supporters, basically, for, the increased resolution, and also the developers at Magix for making the software in the first place for me to purchase and whatnot, because I could have not afforded via YouTube ad revenue alone to buy a whole new graphics card. Which was back when the Andromeda series was happening, is when I made the graphics card purchase, and then also the relatively expensive editing software upgrade, because editing software is really expensive. But here we are, 1080p. We got it. Enjoy. Roll the credits. Also, we're playing Salt and Sanctuary on Andrew's channel because we finished Dark Souls, so we moved on to Salt and Sanctuary, so you can see that over there if you want to, or you can just, I don't know, wait for me to upload it at some point in the future. I'm sure I'll get around to it, but links in the description and whatnot. Salt and Sanctuary co-op, that's an experience.